Good evening. Wonderful to see you all here tonight. I'm Gwen Bird, Dean of Libraries at Simon Fraser University, and welcome to the third installment of One Book, One SFU. I hope that you've all had a chance to read and enjoy this year's pick, Tomboy Survival Guide by Ivan Coyote. Tonight, we're delighted to welcome two extraordinary individuals, Ivan Coyote and Tegan Quin, to the stage in just a few minutes. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. It is a privilege for us to be gathered here tonight. I also have a number of people I'd like to thank before we get started. First, Joe Hall and his fantastic team at the Van City Office of Community Engagement at SFU Woodwards, the Tegan and Sarah Foundation, Chris Brayshaw at Pulp Fiction Books. Chris and his team will be available after the event for book sales, and Ivan will be signing their books. And also all the staff and volunteers who made tonight possible. This event is being filmed and photographed, so if you do not wish to have your photo taken, please see one of our staff members and they'll assist you and make sure that you're not photographed or filmed. There are all-gender bathrooms on the third floor of this building. Please turn off your cell phones before we begin. And now, I would like to welcome to the stage Baharak Yosefi, Head of Library Communications and the mastermind behind not just tonight's event, but our whole One Book, One SFU series. She will introduce Tegan Quin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. As Gwen mentioned, this is our third year with One Book, One SFU, and as a producer and introvert, I'm usually behind the scenes. But tonight, I'm so happy and honored to introduce my dear friend, who happens to also be a really talented musician and one of the very best humans I know. Tegan Quin is in a band with her sister, Sarah. Tegan and Sarah have sold more than 1 million albums and have received 7 gold certifications, 1 double platinum certification, 3 Juno Awards, 2 Players' Prize nominations, and a Grammy nomination. They have performed on some of the world's biggest stages, from the 2015 Oscar telecast to major festivals such as Coachella and Lollapalooza. Tegan has been an outspoken feminist advocate for LGBTQ equality and gender justice since the beginning of her career in 1998. Tonight, I'm also very pleased to tell you about Tegan's latest project, the Tegan and Sarah Foundation. Founded in 2017, the foundation fights for health, economic justice, and representation for LGBTQ girls and women. This mission is founded on a commitment to feminism as well as to racial, social, and gender justice. In partnership and solidarity with other organizations fighting for LGBTQ and women's rights, the foundation raises awareness and funds to address the inequalities currently preventing this group of girls and women from reaching their full potential. Please do visit the foundation's table outside if you haven't done so already. Whenever I've had a chance to speak with Tegan about her work, usually after I've begged her for book recommendations, because this librarian gets very fantastic reading lists from this rock star. I digress. Whenever I've had a chance to speak with Tegan about her work, I walk away in awe of Tegan's kindness, her generosity, and her deep awareness of the responsibilities that come with her position and her platform. She knows that the absence of politics is itself a political position and does not shy away from embracing her personal politics as part of her public persona. And I, for one, have all the time and respect in the world for that. I'm here for it, Tegan. Thank you for all the work you do, and welcome to SFU.
Well, that was unexpected. I thought you were going to make a comment about how I would give you recommendations after drinking an entire bottle of wine at your house, but okay. Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Tegan, and Sarah's not here, so I'm going to talk about her a little bit, though. I first saw Ivan Coyote perform in the late 90s. Newly graduated from high school, Sarah and I used to make the trek across the Rocky Mountains from Calgary to Vancouver pretty regularly. There was a vibrant, at least to us, political, feminist, music, comedy, spoken word, poetry, storytelling, avant-garde, LGBTQ-friendly scene, and we were freshly discovering it, and we were quite enamored, and it's there that I first saw Ivan Coyote perform. And it was soon after I saw Ivan perform for the first time that Sarah and I made the trek from audience members to performers, and I met Ivan backstage, albeit briefly, and I didn't remember this, but Ivan has a better memory than I do. Apparently, there was no alcohol allowed backstage because Sarah and I were 17. Sorry. Over the next 18 years or so, I enjoyed Ivan the same as I did when I first saw them all those years ago, as a member of the audience. I have continued to read their work, and I've cheered as the mountain of accolades and accomplishments have accumulated deservedly. I have felt incredible gratitude for Ivan's tremendous work in the LGBTQ community as they've chipped away in more mainstream venues with their LGBTQ advocacy and anti-bullying efforts. Ivan has set down a roadmap for myself and others to follow in our own LGBTQ advocacy and work, and I'm profoundly grateful for this. When I was invited to take part in the event this evening, I was so excited to finally and formally sit down and talk to Ivan about their significant work in the fiction and nonfiction world, but also the live stage, the storytelling format, the music world, the LGBTQ community, and then Baharak reminded me that it's 45 minutes, not 7 hours. So I'm sad to say that I don't get to ask all the questions I want to, and we're going to focus tonight on Tomboy Survival Guide, which is not sad because I have read Tomboy Survival Guide 3 times, which is 1.5 times more than I have read any other book. That's true, by the way. That's not, I didn't write that that's not a joke. I find a new favorite story every time I read the book. This week it was Craft Singles for Everyone. I read it to my girlfriend when she got home from work the other night. She's been having some anxiety around work, and we both cried. I found the entire book to be tender and tough and equally funny and sad. And it struck me the last time through that I do truly feel like I know Ivan, which is a testament to how well the book is written and how much of Ivan is in it. And I don't know Ivan. In fact, a couple months ago, we sat down for the first time and officially met over coffee because somehow 2 voracious talkers who make their living performing live were nervous about this event. It went great, by the way. So I'm not going to repeat too much of what Baharak or Gwen said. I will just say that I'm going to introduce Ivan. Ivan is going to read from Tomboy Survival Guide. Then we're going to sit down and I'm going to ask questions and try something new where I listen without interruption. Sarah will be so proud. Ask follow-up questions, and then we'll take a few questions from you in the audience, and then Ivan is graciously going to read a few other short pieces to end the evening. And it's already been mentioned, but if you have not picked up Tomboy Survival Guide, I would highly recommend that you do, and then get ready to call somebody you love and read it to them over the phone. And please do stop by and see the Tegan and Sarah Foundation volunteers. I want to just say publicly, too, thank you so much to SFU Library for making such a generous donation to the foundation. You can go online to find out about the grants that we're writing and the work that we're doing, and we're really, truly grateful, so thank you. And it is now, this blah, blah, blah is going to go sit down, and I get to introduce you to Ivan Coyote.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Yeah? is this your water, Baharak?
I didn't
Like,
drink out of it either.
oh, yeah? Okay, great. Yeah, so I was talking to Baharak on the phone last week, and I said, oh, because Baharak's very organized. I don't know if anyone, anyway, so she's very organized, and so there's been like itineraries and, itineraries for the itineraries, and so you'll perform a short reading. So I said, how long of a short reading? And she said, oh, however long you want. And I said, okay, I was thinking 25 minutes. And she's like, no. No. So however long I want, sort of used as a loose term, not to be interpreted so loosely. And I'm really glad to know that both Baharak and Tegan are both Virgos, as you can tell from the printed out guest lists. When we walked into the theater for sound check, I was like, are you a Virgo? She's like, yeah, how did you know? And I'm like, because not only do you have the reserved seats, you've like arranged the seating of the reserved seats. She's like, oh, you just can't have anyone randomly sitting next to. So I knew everything's gonna be fine tonight. Don't have to be nervous. And I picked this piece because it contains some stuff about books in it. And a vague kink reference, oddly. So anyway, I think it's perfect. And it's called I Shine My Armor Every Night. And it's a line from the Tomboy hymn that we wrote for the live show, the live Tomboy Survival Guide show. So my best friend from grade 2 until about grade 10 was named Janine Jones. It wasn't actually, I changed it, but just so you know. She had freckles and big front teeth, and she had 2 brothers, a mean older one named Jerome, also changed his name, and a mostly useless younger brother named Marcus, also changed his name. Her brown hair was much thicker than mine, she would say, which is why she needed to use conditioner, but I didn't. Her parents were Catholic, like my family was, so we never had to explain any of that to each other. And we liked most of the same things. We were both really into books. Nancy Drew, Harriet the Spy, Encyclopedia Brown, and later anything with even a passing mention of sex in it. Judy Blume's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. And those Clan of the Cave Bear books, so weirdly hot. The whole Flowers in the Attic series, also creepily hot. But mostly we were obsessed with this book called The Chrysalids. Is that still a required reading? Okay, good. We spent a lot of time lying on our backs on the side lawn of her house on Pine Street in Whitehorse before the new subdivision went in, when her street was still quiet, wishing that we had been born special with extra toes like the kid in the story and practicing our powers of telepathy. I would think of a color and imagine it in my head. She would try to mind meld with me across the lawn and see if she could see the color in her head and then name it. And we did the same thing with numbers and playing cards too, guessing over and over and over and over until one of us finally got it right, and then rolling around on the grass laughing, convinced that our supernatural powers were growing stronger by the minute. And I would check my oversized wristwatch repeatedly to see if it was 4:30 yet. That was when we had to split up. She would head back into her house to start dinner and make her and her brother's lunches, and I had to ride my bike home and put the shake and bake chicken in the oven or pour the can of mushroom soup over the pork chops and put the rice on. It was what we did. Weekend nights, we would sleep in a tent in her backyard and record giggling broadcasts for the radio show we were going to have one day, pretend interviewing each other, being the guy who rescued 10 people from a burning apartment. I'm no kind of hero. Or the first woman to walk on the moon, or a farmer who broke the Guinness Book of World Records for growing the biggest squash. And we were obsessed for some reason with giant squashes, mostly because at the time, the Guinness Book of World Records record-holding squash was grown in Skagway, Alaska. So we spent a kind of a strange amount of time thinking about gigantic squashes. Anyway. When we started band class in grade 8, she picked the clarinet. I settled on playing the alto saxophone because there were too many boys signed up already to play the drums. We would practice every night playing Billie Jean by Michael Jackson and Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy faster and faster until she would squeak a fart out from blowing her clarinet too hard, and I would fall I would fall off my chair laughing. And then late that September, David Altman, also changed his name, asked her to go to the 9 o'clock late show of The Empire Strikes Back with him. The Late Show. Like on a Friday night, right? Janine said yes and immediately bought light blue eyeshadow at Shoppers Drug Mart and started wearing it. She borrowed her mom's pink daisy razor and nicked the freckled skin on her completely hairless legs in 6 different places. She started talking about getting a pair of gray tights to go with the dress she wore to her uncle's wedding in Alberta. Asked her mom if she could get another spiral perm. I felt a strange combination of jealousy and disgust every time she crooned David Altman's name or wrote it on the front of her binder in purple ballpoint pen with a heart for the dot over the I. I didn't want to take her to the movies and tongue kiss in the second to last row from the back while Luke Skywalker blew up the Death Star. It wasn't that kind of jealousy. It was more like I just didn't want her to go with him so much. None of the boys at school ever noticed me like that. It was like they looked straight over me to Tracy Darling or Wendy Buss or Sandra Chouinard, who, strangely, I didn't change any of their names. I don't know. Just noticed that. Those girls and their tinkling laughs and mascara-draped eyes, the way they lowered their lids halfway and not quite stared back at those boys, the way they snapped their gum and whispered the important stuff and said everything else that didn't matter loud enough for everyone to hear them. If Janine Jones was going to start acting like the rest of them, then I was just going to have to go and find a new best friend because none of that type of business came naturally to me at all. It was nearing the end of September, and Janine's whole backyard smelled like poplar sap and pine needles in the late afternoon sun. The poplar and willow and birch leaves had turned bright yellow and pylon orange, but hadn't fallen yet. One good wind and they would be all over the grass, but they weren't. They looked so postcard bright, framed by the deep, dark green of the pine trees and the dusty green of the spruce, and not a cloud in a perfect blue sky. The McLeod's stupid standard poodle was barking at nothing, as usual, across the street, the soft whup, whup of a sprinkler from the yard next door. We were reading and eating popcorn from a bowl on the grass between us, stretched out on our backs on an old baby blue wool blanket, the kind with the soft satin trim. It smelled like the floor of a tent in the sunshine. Janine rolled on her side and looked at me, blowing her newly curled bangs out of her eyes. I'm going to the movies with David this Friday. The Late Show. I rolled my eyes. No, duh, it's practically like the only thing you've talked about for like 2 weeks already. I have an idea, she said, ignoring my lack of enthusiasm for her romantic life. She propped herself up on one elbow and leaned over me, her face only a couple of inches from mine. I could smell popcorn and cherry lip gloss. I have an idea, she repeated. I said, oh yeah, you want to sneak downstairs and see if we can catch Jerome whacking off again? It is 4:03 p.m. after all. That guy was like total clockwork, man. He's a bigwig for BC Hydro now, but anyway. Shh. Janine laughed and shook her head. Father Mickey made him say so many Hail Marys last week after Mass, the rest of us had to wait in the car for him for like 25 minutes. But no, different idea. I shrugged. I think you and I should practice kissing, she said. Together. Like, not for real, just to like build up our skills. Like French kissing. David went out with Michelle Richards for all of last winter, and she went to Whitehorse Elementary before she moved to Porter Creek, and you know what those girls are like. I'm gonna need to practice, and you'll probably have to learn too, sometime, right? You can't just stick your tongue down a guy's throat. You need to learn like a technique for it. And I've thought a lot about this moment in the many years since. I've flipped these few minutes over. I've studied their underbelly. I've asked myself all the questions I could come up with. I was never in love with my best friend Janine, ever. I never stared at her body when we were swimming or getting changed. I wasn't attracted to her in that way. I only looked at her body to compare it to mine, which I always found lacking somehow. I was skinnier than her. I was paler. My chest was flat. So was my ass. I know you find that hard to believe now, but it was very... Anyway, I didn't like my body much, but I didn't desire hers either. I had sexual fantasies, but they were less to do with body parts of any particular gender and more to do with what I recognize now was my burgeoning kinkiness. I jerked off while thinking about that scene from the Planet of the Apes where Charlton Heston is wearing a collar attached to wrist restraints, hot, and a dirty loincloth, and he has to stand there in front of a tribunal of orangutans in leather and try to convince them that he is in fact a cultured man from another planet who can speak. Hot, or the part where the gorillas chase him on horseback with bullwhips, or when they catch him in a rope net. Needless to say, I kept all these details to myself. And I've wondered many times about why I did what happened next and what fueled the fear that curled up cold from out of my belly and made me jump up to my feet. I can't remember if I mumbled an excuse or an apology or if I said anything at all. I only remember leaping on my new blue bike and pedaling home as fast as I could. I only remember barely stopping to lean my bike up against a post in the carport and fumbling to get the front door open. I kicked off my shoes and I bolted through the kitchen and upstairs into my bedroom and slammed the door behind me, and then I let the tears flood over my bottom lids and down my face, you know, the hot, burning kind of tears that make you make a sound in your chest you don't recognize as your own sound. A sound that catches at the top of your throat and tears a hole there before it escapes your mouth. I didn't want to kiss my friend. Her lips were puffy and covered in butter. Ugh. And I didn't know how we would look at each other after or what we would say. But that wasn't it. That wasn't what I was crying about. I wouldn't know for 6 more years what was still stuffed way down inside of me that scared me so much. Thank you.
Don't forget to put the mic close to your mouth.
How's that, Derek?
I gotta get my questions.
Okay. Another Virgo, you'll note from the, show them. Yeah. Are they numbered?
They're numbered, and this is personalized stationery.
Told you we're in good hands.
You always want to have a Virgo on your team.
Always. My mom's a Virgo.
Do you feel better now that you've read, or do you feel more nervous because this part's coming now?
This part's coming up. Yeah, this is the part I know I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you so afraid of right now? Can you put it into words?
I'll tell you later. I don't know. It's just random, you know. It's just like the X factor.
Yeah. Do you take Q&A like this in front of an audience very often?
As little as possible.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. It's
be really
often
fun.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Often I do. But now I've learned, just because just sometimes like there'll be the most random, weird, loaded question right at the end. I think that person always waits. They're like, and we'll take one more question. And then it's like either super, super deep, it would take you like approximately 5 weeks to answer, or it's just like, you know, the one, I call it a pontifa question, but it's not really a question.
I think I want that question.
Do you?
Yeah, and I instead,
I'm sure someone
mostly
will
what I
oblige
get
us.
is like, what's your favorite Sarah song? I'm like, well,
I feel good about your questions.
you do feel good?
Well, we had the lunch, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was good.
I tricked you, though, because nothing we talked about at the lunch. Because I already talked to you about it. Boring.
Yeah, true.
You know?
You're not wrong.
No,
You're
I'm
not
just
wrong.
kidding. I'm just kidding. I actually said this before we came out, but I feel like, well, not came out, but, you know. I said this earlier this evening.
Earlier this evening.
That I feel like so much of my life is spent answering questions about my identity and sexuality and being a twin. And so
I was thinking about that in the shower today. Not about your twin. No.
No.
That came out totally wrong.
about me?
No, I was like, I wonder what questions
Yeah,
Steven's
yeah,
going to
yeah.
ask me. And then I was thinking, like, because we already talked, I was like, please don't ask me about the they pronoun, and please don't ask me about bathrooms.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah, not
over
on
it.
here. Not
and
on
then I
these
was thinking,
cards.
what are the questions that you hate? And I was like, I bet it's about being a twin. And then what else?
I would would never say hate, but I think there are questions for
Okay,
me
hate
that
might
I'm
be a
like
strong
maybe
word.
slightly tired of answering.
Yeah,
But it all
that's
depends.
a better way to put
You
it.
may agree. It's how someone asks the question. If someone asks a question I've had a million times, but they genuinely seem interested, then I
It's
can't
also the
wait to
order of
tell
the
them.
questions, too,
Yeah, sure.
a little bit.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let me be the question.
Okay.
Tonight, I asked.
Okay,
You
see how
sit
this
quietly
goes.
while I ask the question, and then
Got
I'll
it.
sit quietly while you answer the
I'm
question.
totally into this.
It was fun. I feel like 45 minutes already went by.
Is it done? Oh, I brought my thing. Okay,
You
let's
brought a
look.
timer.
I got a thing. Oh, shit. No, that's not a timer.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I got to punch my code in now.
Sending.
Awkward.
Oh my God. Are you taking video?
No. Okay. All right. It's good.
Okay. So when I was rereading the book last week, I had this really funny memory that popped into my head when I was reading Not My Son, so the first story in the book. And it was of when Sarah and I turned 25, we happened to be in Calgary, and my dad took us to Denny's for breakfast. And my dad is one of my storyteller, role models. Okay, he tells these very like caustic, long, detail-filled, slow, tales that are really, 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 really funny and usually just like brutal, And he basically spent the entire breakfast admitting to us that he felt really, really guilty, but also he was like laughing about it because he's kind of like a jerk, right? So it was like the balance. But he had been showing photo albums to his girlfriend, and he was telling stories about us, like, when we were babies and kids, like talking about all the photos, and that he had this realization that he had fabricated most of our early life because our favorite thing to do was sit with him between us and point at, early photos that we couldn't possibly remember and say, what were we doing here? And what was happening here? And who else was here? And who bought us this outfit? And he said, I just would like make everything up, because I don't fucking know. And so he was admitting that he kind of felt bad a little bit, but I thought it was really hilarious because I think as a storyteller, embellishing, exaggerating, these are like incredible ways to get an audience to care. And you heard my mother 20 minutes ago call me a liar, literally.
She totally did.
She was like, "You're a liar." So that's how my mom sees me. So
She said both of you are liars.
Yeah, both of us are liars, and we come from a long line of liars. So my first question is,
Is my father a liar?
no, are you a liar? No, just kidding. I brought you here to find out, is this real? No, but I'm intrigued because you have done so much storytelling live. I want to first know, is there a massive difference between how you tell a story live and how you put into print a story? And is it immutable once it's there? Can it continue to grow? Can it change? I mean, you kind of answered the question because you were adding so many thoughts and comments, so you've kind of answered it, but I'm curious about the process and how different it is, telling a story live versus putting it in a book, and can it change? Can it grow? Is it solid? Is that it? Can it ever? That's it, now I'm done. I'm gonna just go sit here quiet.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to distinguish between the two voices because they've been so blended for me ever since the beginning of sort of practicing my craft. Because I don't feel, it's very hard for me to like completely ad-lib a story. I have done it and I can do it, but on stage I feel like you're entering into this kind of sacred negotiation with the audience. And I always feel like I have to do my best all the time. So I feel like just getting up there and like right off the cuff, it's not good enough. I want it to be crafted. And there's certain lines for me that they have to be delivered in and I think this comes from musical background too. It's like learning a lick. And
What's that?
a lick?
Music
it's
joke.
Like, it's a little music joke. So it was, to me, it's like learning a lick. So, but once I've got that all, so anyway, I always painstakingly wrote stuff down and then memorized it. And as soon as it was painstakingly memorized, then I could step away from it. And add stuff in and ad-lib little bits, as long as I had that skeletal structure to follow, right? And then through the editing process, like Brian Lamb and I am so fortunate to have worked for such a long time. Like he edited my first book in 1997. We're still working together 20 years later, 10 books later. And so, but he's an editor. So he, to me, would take a lot of the musicality out of the sentence. So now I just negotiate with him, keeping in the back of my mind. Like I just remember there was a there was a line in Loose End, I think, about when my house burnt down, and I came around the corner and there was all these fire trucks parked all kinds of sideways. That was the line that I wrote. And he I can't remember what dumb line he wanted to change it to, but it was something that was like they were parked in different directions. And I was like, I'm always saying it to Brian, like, read it out loud. It's about the musicality of the sentence, about the pacing of the sentence. So always in my head now, I keep in the back of my mind that this is a guy, this is like it's the skeleton. And I never now, I would say, almost never completely perform a piece totally it's never how it is in the book, for sure. And even if I memorize it, that's what gives me the freedom to go and do other things, right? Have you ever seen a concert where you don't feel like it's a live concert? You feel like it's like they either don't interact with the audience somehow, or there's nothing that doesn't feel really rote.
Yeah.
I want it to be a special thing every time. And so, and there's different audiences and there's different stuff going on, and then you can reference it. If you're listening to the other stuff that's happening on stage, you can play off something that you heard an earlier performer do or something like that. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
I never really deliver anything the same way twice anymore. And that's where the fun of it all comes. But still I need that comfort of the memorized material.
Yeah, that's actually really awesome. And
yeah.
also what I'm hearing is that means you can exaggerate and embellish still, even though the story's been put into print. You can still get excited by an audience and add details or make jokes or...
Yeah. And then, people ask me, is that like a true story? Is it a true story? Is it a true story? But I come from a family of storytellers. So there's like, I remember one time my friend Sharon came over to visit, and that was when my gran was still alive, and there was like 3 houses of all my family on the same block. So they would just see your truck was there or your van was there, and then everybody would come over, and so it becomes a big, and that was whenever we used to smoke inside still. And anyway, it would be this, and we spent like 4 or 5 hours hanging out, uncles dropping in, cousins coming in, aunties all over the place, and sandwiches and tea and cigarettes. And we get back in the van, and Sharon's like, wow, you're not even the best storyteller in your family. And I was like, I know, I'm the only one who wrote it down.
Yeah.
And but
and
always
I think
there would
that
be
interaction, right, like with people, like, I wondered, I mean, this isn't on the cards, so this is my first time.
Do it,
I'm
do
gonna
it. I'm
venture
here
off
for
the
you.
card, but part of what I love about telling stories on stage is that Sarah's there to correct me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when it irritates me.
Yeah.
Or it's just not true, like,
Yeah.
or I can't believe that she's mistaken this for that, or, conflated something. That's part of the fun, because then the audience, you can see that they become more invested in the story because they're watching someone edit live in walk back a story, or,
Oh, yeah. And if
Do you ever
there's
feel
like
like you
15
wish
members
Sarah
of
was
my
on stage with
family-
you to argue with you, or just someone from your family? Do you want to borrow her?
My cousin Dan does that. We do that. But we actually, like, we don't really argue with each other. We, like, sort of goad each other on, and then he'll tell, like, some ridiculous lie, and I'll totally back him up. Like, oh, yeah, no, I was there. I saw it. It's incredible. It was incredible. But we used to, I always think, like, if there's, like, 10 members of my family at the table, there's, like, 20 versions of the story that could happen. Yeah.
Well,
And
this
I've
actually
never had a
leads
problem
really
with
well
that.
into this next question that I have, like, because I thought this week when I was rereading the book, and it was specifically in Craft Singles for Everyone, I was thinking, this is a shared experience that you're writing about. I mean,
Yep.
it's your perspective.
Yep.
It's what you felt and what you remember. It's, it's 100% your story, and yet there were so many people there who all experienced it, and experienced it probably quite intensely, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, when you sit down to write, before you put a word down on the page, like, and we talked a little bit about this at coffee, but, like, do you worry that someone's going to call and be like, that is literally not what happened? Like, do you care? Is that important? Is it so significantly yours and your experience that it doesn't matter? Does it affect what you write? And, does that, like, has anyone prevented you from sharing something about yourself because there was enough of a difference in how you recalled it?
Okay, that's a I care very deeply,
I
first
put it
of all.
clearly here if that
Did
was
you?
confusing
Okay,
to you.
okay.
So. Do you worry about discrepancies or conflict that may arise from stories from shared experiences? Example, craft singles for everyone.
Okay. Well, I care very deeply, and I think ultimately one of the things I realized was that in my family, especially my mom, many of them wish that I wouldn't talk about anything at all ever.
I think what you said to me was too bad, write your own book.
That's what I tell my Uncle John. Yeah, because he's the one who he's a jerk. So I sometimes write the jerky things that he does. And then he's always like, I came off like a real jerk in your story. And I'm like, well, don't be a fucking jerk. And, I did say that to him one time. I'm like, look, like nothing's stopping you. Write your own book. Say whatever you want to say. Like that's how it goes. So, but I've learned to use my powers for good over the years, more than not. And I do deeply care about my family, and so I don't let it affect what I write, but I do let it affect what I publish and what I perform, right? They still are the ultimate litmus test, right? My mom reads every book that I write. And I always say like, oh, I'll send you one. And then I chicken out and I don't send her one. And then I say I sent it and then it's not sent yet or it's on the table and I'm going to send it. And then she finally goes into Max Fireweed in Whitehorse on Main Street and buys one. And the first time she reads it is not to see if I'm getting better or not to see if she likes the book. It's like to see if there's anything in there that she's going to take issue with or mostly be embarrassed by, I think, you know. At the same time as being like, I've heard all these stories. The last time she was in Max, I actually think I finally did send her Tomboy, but book number 11. But she was in Max Fireweed buying one of my books, and there was someone in front of her in line also buying one of my books. And I heard this from my friend, not from her, but she was like, "Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice that's my daughter. I mean, my child, my offspring," and she really struggles with that. Like, not the pronoun. She's down with the pronoun. She just doesn't know how to introduce me to people anymore. Anyway, I'm getting off track. So
No, it's great.
So it is the grand litmus test. Like I just launched a new show with my collaborator Sarah McDougall, and I do a whole story in my grand's accent, and she had a very particular sort of version of a Cockney accent, and it was super strong. Plus, but she lived in the Yukon for 60 years, so it did morph a little bit. But I was like really nervous. I practiced it over and over and over again. Like while I was falling asleep, I had all these old recordings of her, and I listened to them over and over and over again. And I practiced it and practiced it and practiced it. And but it was my family that I wanted to clear it with, and specifically my cousin Lindsay, because my cousin Lindsay lived with my grandma her entire life, right up until my grandma passed away. And and she was her like primary sort of personal care person. And Lindsay said that I nailed it. That it was like, and my family was all crying. And so craft singles for everyone, I've done that and when I have a gig in the Yukon, like it's a guarantee.
I can't imagine.
I sell like 60 tickets to my family, right? And or the producer or whoever does. And anyway, they were all there. So it's like, you better not fuck it up, first of all. And if I can move them, if I can bring them back to that place of the stories about my being on my with my family while my grandma was passing away. And so they're like the ultimate test of everything, because you can bullshit anyone else, or or they can, but to tell that story in front of all those people that were actually there in the room and still have them be like, that's the, yeah. So
It's overwhelming for me to imagine, because everyone in my family has a very strong sense of who they are and storytelling. And when I try to imagine something so important, like you tell a story so beautifully, and it's so well written, and it's so, I've cried so many times. My poor girlfriend, when she got home and I read it to her, like I was just, she thought someone had died that I knew. But I was like, you must let me read. And she was just like, oh, wow, what's happening? Anyway, it's beautiful. Okay. just going to check what the third question is.
Let's do a time check. I forgot.
Oh, yeah, check the time. You're like a Virgo.
I
you're
was
so
raised by
worried.
a
You got
very
somewhere to
strict
go?
Virgo. No, I do not have anywhere to go. I don't want to piss Baharak off.
She put like a sensor on my ankle, and she's going to buzz me when it's time. She's going to give me a little, I'm like, ugh. The rental's up. Okay. Oh, actually, we talked a little bit about this. We're both living in this glorious age of clickbait, and even reputable media will often pull the most sensational and most random things we say or write or perform to lure people in to read about us or to become subscribers. And I'm wondering, putting out such a personal book and putting out so much of yourself, I mean, has it changed over the last couple of decades, like what you want to put out about yourself and how you approach press? And like when you sit down to write a book like this, do you, like I don't think, when I sit down to write a record, I don't think about anyone but myself. I don't think about Sarah, I don't think about the audience, and I definitely don't think about the work that's going to come in terms of media and marketing and touring, and because I would not do it. So I have to just pretend that doesn't exist. And I'm wondering, how much thought goes into what's going to happen when a book like this comes out.
Well, I don't think about that stuff too much in the writing process, because I think I would just chase myself right into a corner staring at a blank page or a blank screen if I thought about it too much. I mean, there were some really painful parts of that book to write. And I think we talked about that weird
Which you don't have to get into. I'm more, it
was basically this interview that I did with someone from a certain national.
Because there's so many of them, so no one here probably can guess which one.
But she just came, I remember the interview started at 11 o'clock, and she just asked me the most painful question at approximately 11 o'clock and 33 seconds. And then I said, actually, I didn't want to talk about that right out the gate. Maybe we could move on. And then she asked me another painful question.
What's your favorite color? Okay, back to the first question.
Yeah. Which is why I brought up the order thing. At least establish some kind of a basis of respect or trust or, just a camaraderie or something before you lay on the really heavy questions. But I just don't think, I wanted to just honor the stories. I wanted to honor the idea of the book, and I didn't allow myself to think too much about that in the creative process. In the editing process, absolutely. I edited that book. I worked harder on that book than any of my other books. And I think it's my last sort of nonfiction for a little while. I think I really want to sort of escape into fiction, not as a reader, but as a writer. And part of that is so that I have a little bit of a degree of separation when I'm being asked those questions, because I think even if I wrote it from personal experience, they would say your character so and so instead of you, right? Because and whenever I've sort of pushed back against a reporter for asking me what I find to be an invasive question. I remember one guy just saying, well, you wrote a book called Gender Failure. What do you expect? So, and I know that I'm not the only one in that, and I always try to honor and keep that in mind whenever I'm listening to a writer or reading a writer who's speaking about their own identity in any way. Just how brave an act that can be sometimes, because it does open you up to some, it's almost like there's nowhere that people think is not okay to go, right? When it comes to questions. And like I said, sometimes I'm willing to go there if I'm comfortable, if I feel that they read the book carefully, but if they're just you know what it's like. Spent 15 seconds on your website, and they're just. I remember I had this one guy.
If they went to your website at all.
Right? I made a 7-minute short film, and it won a big award, and it went to a festival at Queen's University, and the guy calls me up to do an interview about the film, and he said, "Yeah, I haven't had time to watch the film." first thing, right? I'm like, it's 7 minutes long, dude. Yeah, I'm really busy with finals, and anyways, I haven't watched the film, but I went to your website, and you really look like a dude. Let's talk about that.
Oh.
Right out the gate, and I was just like, he was cranky, and he was at Queen's University, and I don't remember his name. If I would tell you right now, believe me. But
Someone might find it before the end of this.
yeah. So I said, I'll tell you what. How about you like take 7 minutes or maybe 10 minutes and like, you know, go do a little bit of research or watch the film and then call me back when we can talk about the film that you're doing the interview on, whatever. And he got really miffed and hung up and called me back 10 minutes later and then wrote this article. For someone who talks about gender so much, Ivan Coyote doesn't really want to talk about gender. But then it went out, this was right when stuff started really going out online. So then it went out there. So if anyone who did do their research would be like, so I've heard that you don't really like to talk about gender. And it's kind of it took like 5 years for that to drop down on so that people had to really go looking for it. But anyway.
Let's all pool our money and like turn off the internet, restart. It comes back up, like photos, bad interviews. Just everyone gets a fresh start. I think we can all come together on that.
Yeah, I've had a friend who wrote a poem about pubic crabs one time, or
Yeah,
pubic
let's
lace.
not. There's
and
some
that was
pretty-
the first thing that popped up every time he was Google searched for like 5 years.
Awful. Sarah has like I think one of the best versions of like that kind of story. Like
Oh, yeah?
a woman called her. Oftentimes a publicist sits on the phone, so like if something terrible happens or they say something inappropriate, you know, they can disengage the call. I don't think they're listening. That's my hypothesis, is that like based on what happens on calls, no one ever interrupts. So I'm pretty sure no one's actually listening. But they're always like, "I'll be listening," and I'm like, "You won't." But Sarah has this awesome story. We had a record called Heartthrob, which came out in 2013. And she
Great
gets on
record.
the phone, and this woman's like, "Hi, okay, great." She was from England. I'm not going to do a British accent because I think it's rude. But I want to. So imagine this in a British accent. But she's like, this woman's like, "So I'd like to talk about your new record, So Jealous." So Jealous came out in 2004. And before Sarah has a chance to be like, "Oh, that's not our new record," the woman's like, "So you've got this big song, Walking with a Ghost, and you're on tour with the Killers." And Sarah starts to laugh. And is like, "Oh, wow. I don't know if you were like in a ski accident and just woke up from a coma. But literally, I have some news for you. That happened over
9
a decade
years have
ago."
gone
Yeah,
by.
like, and the woman, like, it's like silent, and Sarah's like laughing, and she's like, "Our new record," I don't, like, you know, she's like, she's probably shuffling papers, right? Looking, oops, jumped back, you know, whatever. And the woman goes, "Oh, so the record was produced by," you know, like just kind of launches into another question. So it's like, once again, Sarah's like, "Oh, yeah, no, the record, I mean, well, I'm sorry, we're talking about our new record, or are we talking about the old record?" And like at this point, the publicist is like, "Sorry, I'm going to interrupt.
Sarah's like, "You are
Jeannie,"
listening."
yeah, she's like, "Jeannie, do you want to like go ahead and disengage the call, and you know, we'll set up this interview when you've had time to listen to the new record, read their bio, get discharged from the hospital that you're in," like, you know, whatever. But I thought that was so funny because I was just like, wow, imagine that you're that unprepared. I mean, look at these cue cards. I mean, I could have just come up here and just like went, but I was like, "Do your work,
No,
right?"
you can't because you're a Virgo.
I can't. No, you're right. Well, because I can blah, blah, blah. I got to stay in the lines here. Okay. Someone also asked one time if Sarah and I get our period at the same time. That was their opening question.
Opening question.
That's the kind of stuff that I deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, you know what? We're going to bore the people who don't have to get interviewed all the time.
Do you guys get your period at the same time? I was like, bye. Okay, question number 4. So, people ask all the time, why do I write music? Where does it come from? What, you know, is it an itch? Is it a nagging? Is it like, what is it? I find it really difficult to say what it is that powers my writing. And
So are you going to ask me that now? Right now? Mm-hmm. Really? Yeah. Let's do a time check. When are we supposed to be done again?
come on.
No, see, I forgot my itinerary up in
Okay, what time is it right now? 5 minutes. Okay, just quickly.
5 minutes, okay.
Well, here, do you want me to read question number 5 and you can decide?
Okay, yep.
Okay, here's question number 5. Okay, and I wish my son you open with the line, "This spring I got another letter." This one read, and then you know, print. I'm like, it's like I've never read a book before. There's words on the paper. There's all these words. So you print the letter of this parent who wrote you a letter about their child who just came out as trans, and then you sort of write a response, which I'm assuming you didn't send, but maybe you did.
No, I did
You
send.
did send that.
I did send.
And it's a beautiful, incredible, again, lot of tears. And I'm wondering. So this is the fifth question that you get to decide which one you want to answer. But
I already want to answer this one.
You do want to.
Yeah,
Okay,
this
great.
one.
So I'm curious because also as a performer and as a queer person, as a woman, as a person that's out there in the world, I sort of feel like some sort of social responsibility. I feel like so I'm wondering if you feel like the same joy and excitement at being a resource, and do you feel social responsibility? Do you feel you owe something back to the people who come to your shows, and how do you navigate that in 2018 when a million letters and emails and social media messages can come your way? Like, how do you navigate how to help, and how responsible are you? Not that you're irresponsible, but like, how responsible do you feel you are to give advice, to write these letters, and to engage with people who need you? That's my final question. It's a big one. Can you answer that in 3.5 minutes?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
I do feel huge some days amount of responsibility, and especially working with youth as much as I do, being sort of a non-consensually shoved into this role model position, and the responsibility that and I've done 22 school shows so far in February, and and so up to 1,000 kids at a time. So I've had to learn how to draw some pretty difficult for me boundaries sometimes, and because I can't take on counseling because it's not just the queer and trans kids, it's other marginalized. I don't like the word marginalized because I find it marginalizing, but you know what I mean. Other kids who don't fit in for whatever reason.
Kids.
Yeah, kids in general. And with I wish my son, I'm pretty on. That was the letter that she wrote me. I wrote her a response. I sent it back to her. We had an exchange back and forth. And then when I was working on the book, I thought, that seemed to be, if it was helpful for her, which she said that it would be helpful for other parents. And so I wrote her and asked her permission and her son's permission. We changed his name. And I think about it all the time. I think it's one of the reasons why I edited that book so carefully, and I thought politically about a lot of stuff. And I mean, that's one of the reasons. To me, that's one of the most important stories in the book, because when it comes to role models for trans youth, for people who are female assigned, I really want us and them to think about what kind of a masculinity we're going to build and embody in a world that doesn't need a lot more toxic masculinity. And when I first came out, or when I first started, accepting my sort of gender difference, the role models for trans men at the time, and there wasn't a lot of space made for non-binary people, were pretty fucked up. I wish I still had it, but it was pre-House Fire. I remember having, and the guy is nice. He's a nice guy, but he published this terrible How to Pass, which is problematic language in the first place. How to Pass sort of little pamphlet in Seattle in the probably early 90s. And it was basically take up space, spread your legs on a bus, interrupt people, put your arms no, I'm serious. And it was all basically things that we're trying to, get people to be more conscious about. But that was the message that was being given in the trans community and I don't judge it, because back then especially it was about safety sometimes too. It was about how to just, get by and survive, and not, out yourself, right? And so it was basically be a dude and be a duty dude. Doodly. And so are we supposed to wrap it all up at 8 o'clock? Sorry, I'm just really on this
You're
time
really, yeah.
kick. No. I just don't want to. I can't. I thought we were supposed to be done with the audience questions and stuff. Okay.
We'll do some questions.
All right. We'll do. Sorry, I just
That
want
was
to.
a really great answer, by the way, and I really meant what I said in my introduction. I just think it's incredible. I cannot believe you do that many schools and you do that much work. It's just unbelievable. It's astonishing. It's really incredible.
Thanks.
Really.
Yeah.
Really.
I started writing these things. I call them literary Doritos. Some people call them aphorisms, I think is the word. I call them literary Doritos, and they're like little short pieces. Some of them actually were Facebook statuses, believe it or not, or Twitter. And I really like them because you can just kind of, and I like to decide how to close. So close the night. Well, it's, you never know what the last question's going to be, especially if you don't know it's the last question, right? So, yeah. I'm just going to read a couple of these little Doritos, and then thank you so much for coming, and thanks to SFU for having me, and thanks each and every soul who made it through the door tonight. This is one of my favorites. Older butch sightings in airports make me feel like I am part of an army. It's a quiet, button-down, peacekeeping brigade that nods instead of saluting. Hey, how's it going? Silver hair and eye wrinkles are earned instead of stripes or medals. And there's a story that comes out of that, which is the book got bought up by a German publisher, and they wanted to translate it into German. So I get this very earnest letter from the German translator who writes me a letter explaining that the line about make me feel like I'm part of an army, that for all the obvious reasons they don't sort of romanticize the military in Germany. So they suggested that we change to be something that was sort of more in keeping with German culture, and they suggested that older butch sightings make me feel like I am part of a collective gardening cooperative. True story. So luckily I was alone in my office when I read that email, and I laughed so hard I fell off my chair, and then I wrote them back and I was like, I don't think that's exactly capturing sort of. So we settled on hockey team for the German translation. Semi-drunk and definitely creepy dude in the lineup at the market to uninterested young mother. Is that a new baby? Young mom retorts coolly, is there even such a thing as an old baby? These are fun, right? I just love them. Kid at the grocery store, I don't want vegetables. You don't give me what I want. You are a bad daddy. Father, bad daddy. I like the sound of that. And right there, all of a sudden, he got magically way better looking to me. Well, I know where I want to end. I just got to find it. Okay, so I'm flying to Calgary. No checked luggage. I'm waiting for my suitcase to go through the X-ray when I see on the X-ray screen a giant dildo in someone's carry-on bag. I glance nonchalantly at the woman beside me, and then at the man on the other side of me. Neither of them appear to notice this at all, and then I realize that is my bag on the screen. At first, I was very confused, having just packed my bag for a solo overnight work gig. I was going to Calgary, actually, for an interfaith conference, which for some strange reason, they'd hired me to be the keynote at. So I had just packed my bag, sans dildo of any kind. The technician is now looking at me as well, as everyone else. So I say, it's a microphone. Which was true. I say this out loud to nobody and everybody at the same time. It's a vocal microphone. Nobody says anything. Microphone! I repeat. I'm in Dawson Creek. I'm surrounded by femme tomboys. My gran used to call them tough broads. Eyeshadow and coveralls. Manicures and steel-toed boots. It's nice to be north. And this is my last one. Flagging has never gone out. Should never, ever be allowed to go out. May all the secret languages of the queers and the bent live on in our pockets forever. Thank you. Thanks so much.